Welcome to the RC Community Sticker Project, brought to you by Fast Freddy RC. In today's video, we're doing a shout-out to Riviera RC. Nice chap, crazy new in-box finds, cool projects. So for step 21, attaching the rear dampers, well, you can see that it's basically the same thing as the front. We're going to use that C14 piece, the step screw, and into the top outer hole. And then on the bottom, you're going to use the inner hole of the 3. Now remember, I'm making this a 4-wheel steering version, so things are a little different. So we're actually moving over to step 3 on the 4-wheel steering instructions, and you'll notice it's the same at the top, but there's only 2 of these holes at the bottom, and we're still doing the inner one. So this is where we're going to start here. We're going to work on step 3 and install the rear shocks. So before we get started on this, there is something kind of interesting about these instructions, because when you get to the 4-wheel steering side of things, they seem to cheap out on how things are put together. And I'll give you an example of that. Obviously we have our larger step screw, we've got our smaller ones, but notice there's nothing telling you how many, and on the picture there's nothing telling you which one you're supposed to attach. So it's assuming that you've referred to step 21 when you're installing this, and then they're just showing you how to do it on step 3 for the 4-wheel steering, which isn't that different. But the thing is, with step 3, there's no mention of actually putting the shocks together. Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, I just think it's weird that they want you to keep flipping back and forth with the pages when you could have just done all of that with this step right here. So first off, they want you in step 21 to put in the C11 part, which is a shorter spacer. On the front we had a thicker one, but with this it's the shorter one. So we need to put that on. We need to put a spring on, and again we've got this piece here that's going to go over the bottom, slides across, and it fits just like that. So there is one of our shocks. Well, we're going to do the same thing with this other one. So we need to put in the C11 spacer, slide that on, and we're going to put on the spring, and again, pull up, grab this, and that part's got to fit over the bottom. And in fact, if I do this upside down, you can kind of see how that more or less is going to go over top and fit on. And so there we go. There are our 2 shocks as before. So for installing this, it's going to be no different really to what we did in step 20, because we've built this exactly the same, being the front or the rear. Because you can see here, because we're doing this 4-wheel steering, this has only 2 of these holes, whereas if we'd used the part, if this wasn't going to be 4-wheel steering, there would be 3. Well, because we're doing this, we now know we're going to go onto the inner one, and on the top it's going to be the larger one. So I've put a bit of grease on this screw already. You can see that we're going to put it through where the screw is facing forward, and the spacer is going to go on to this side before we install it right here. So let's do that first. So I'm going to grab the screwdriver and we'll start screwing that in. And remember, this is going through the softer plastic. Well, I guess that part's the harder one, but you can see as soon as it grips and we're at the end, just stop. You do not need to over tighten. It's already a tapping screw with that sort of that flat area, meaning that you can't really screw it in any farther. So there's your top done. Now on the bottom, again, we're going to grab one of our step screws, and we're going to put a little grease on there. And again, in fact, I might even just flip that over. This one, we're going to the inside, just like we did the front. And now we're going to be able to screw that in, and we've got to go all the way because that's got to go. Whoop. And you can't over tighten it because you need to be able to go as far as you can. And you can see how that's working. So that's that part. And again, don't over tighten this. So there we go. So same thing with the other side. We're going to grab our shock, but we're also going to grab our step screw. And now that it's greased up, we're going to grab our shock, put that through there. The spacer is going to go on the other side there, and we're going to attach it to the top just as we did before. So this is really the exact same step, step 20, that we did when we were making the front shocks and attaching them. There's really nothing different about it. So we're going to screw this in as far as we can. Don't over tighten. I'm at the end, so that's it. And again, we're going on to the inner hole. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to put some grease on the step screw. And we're going to grab this, put it to the inside as before. There we go. Squeeze that together, and we're going to screw that in. And same thing, just don't over tighten because we're going into the soft plastic. So I'm at the end now. There we go. And there we go. So there is our rear shocks installed. And again, they're identical to the front because we've built this four-wheel steering. So all the parts used front and back for the lower arms, upper arms, axles, etc. are the same. So technically when building this four-wheel steering, you're building the front and back basically identically. So that step 3 is complete. So I'm actually now going to go back and we're going to continue working with step 22. So now that the shocks are done, even on the four-wheel steering side of things, we can now move on to step 22, and we're going to attach the front bumper and the rear bumper.